Hello, everyone. The award goes to the most valuable podcast. That intro is probably not going to stick. I'm going to go with that for now, though. This is the first episode of the MVPod, as it'll be known. Most valuable podcast is the long form name. I did a show called that before. It's been years ago now. It was only on audio platforms. Really didn't have much to it. Very basic stuff. But now we're here, we're back, and we're doing it again. It is going to be the MV Pod, and it's going to be the recurring, hopefully a weekly thing on this particular channel, the STK Sports channel. Very excited to get going with it. I've always wanted to have a podcast. I always wanted to do a sports related show. Now, obviously, this is the very first episode, so I do want to say that, we are going to be getting into some fun stuff, as you see by the title and by the thumbnail. First mock draft, a pre-combine mock draft. The combine obviously later this week. Today is Tuesday as I'm recording this. The mock draft, oh my goodness, a burp just hit me like a tank. Combine hits on Thursday. The combine doesn't wrap up until Saturday or Sunday. It's an all-weekend event up in Indianapolis, here in the great state of Indiana. I say great, not very great, but shout out the Colts pennant and little Peyton Manning plushie. We're going to be looking at sort of where I think my personal mock draft stands pre-NFL draft combine, and then we're going to do one hopefully before too long, kind of detailing what I think the what the combine might have changed for my first round mock draft. Now, it is just a first round mock draft, so if you're a Panthers or a Browns fan, I am sorry. One day between now and the draft in April, I will get to your team. And what I think your team will do with their first pick. Obviously, the Panthers have 33, so that's pretty quick, just second round. Browns are all the way at 55. Maybe they'll trade up to get into it. But before we get into that, I do want to say, like I said, leave some love on this first ever podcast. I do want this on audio platforms, so if you're not on YouTube and you're not watching my beautiful face say these words and spew this unnecessary knowledge, definitely upvote or whatever, download, whatever the hell audio platforms say. And I say that as if this podcast will be on audio platforms. Can't guarantee that, but if you're listening to it on an audio platform right now, clearly I just lied. Or no, I didn't lie to anybody. I don't know. So we're gonna go ahead though, and we're gonna get into the mock draft. But before I do that though, like I said, I wanted to get a couple things talked about. First off, I want to establish, this show is going to lean football at the time being because we're getting into draft season, and the draft is probably my favorite thing in both sports, whether that be football or basketball. But basketball is probably my favorite sport to watch right now, probably my favorite sport it's definitely my favorite sport to just be involved in at the moment. And so we're going to be talking a lot about that. We're going to be bringing guests on hopefully at some point, trying to do interviews, trying to just have people on to talk about and get their opinions on different things and see where we're at. But I wanted to preface everything by just being like, hey, this show is going to be very loose, very fun, free-flowing. We're here to watch sports and have a good time watching it. Maybe some gambling involved, maybe some drafting, maybe some, trash talking some players, even though we are never going to be on that level ourselves. And that's the fun of it, is I'm sitting in my bedroom with a pair of Apple headphones, speaking into the mic of them, and I'm talking about sports in a way that someone of my criteria or my expertise, basically what I'm saying is I don't have the resume to be doing what I'm doing, but I get to do it anyway because that's freedom, and that is the internet. So, before I get into the mock draft, I do want to also say that, and I know that's like the third time that I've prefaced this mock draft. This mock draft is going to be what I would do. It's going to be very personal. It's going to be very not a prediction, really. It's not going to be, I think this team's going to do this, or I think this team's going to do that. It's what I would do if I was the GM personally, if I was the guy behind that desk making millions of dollars with the fate of the universe on the line. I want Iguodala. He's not in the draft, but still. So we're going to be making these picks. We're going to be getting it done. And we're going to be doing these picks, and we're going to be getting this draft done on, switch over here to the PFF mock draft simulator. If I did my editing right, I'm on the bottom right corner for you guys while we look at this beautiful mock draft simulator. Shout out, obviously, to Trevor Sikkema for his big board, as we're going to be able to look through that to kind of get an idea of some of the prospects in this draft. And PFF, if you don't have a subscription to them, it's not really a plug or a sponsor. I'm just saying, if you're a football nerd like me, PFF subscription is definitely worth it. Between all the different draft-related stuff, the big boards, they have some free agency stuff that's pretty cool right now. And also, you get player grades and different tools like that with the subscription. And that gives you a better idea of, what you're seeing on the field. It's very easy for fans, especially whenever you're first getting into being kind of a nerdier type of fan. This goes for all sports: football, basketball, even baseball for sure, hockey. It can be like, every sport where you want to get deeper into it. You watch the ball, you watch the puck. You don't. It's hard to see what's going on outside of just the quarterback holding the football or the point guard with the basketball in his hands. It's hard to see what the other players are doing moving around. You're just watching the ball for the most part. And what PFF does is it makes it a little bit easier for you to do that whenever you watch the game. And then maybe you go back and watch film for yourself, or you can just look at their player grades and see how they did on different plays, or maybe you didn't actually catch what happened. We're going to be using their mock draft simulator, as pretty much everybody in this YouTube space or in this podcast space has been doing to do these mock drafts. So this is a very visual episode for you today, and we kind of have this visual aid with us as we talk about some different scenarios here that could be playing out. Now, I do want to say there's not going to be any trades in this draft, although I do think a Justin Fields trade could potentially impact the first round. I also think that what could be done if the Bears keep Justin Fields, let's say they trade back out of the number 1 pick, could even trade out of the number 9 pick because of that. I think there's a chance that a team like the Giants, or if we go down the board a little bit here, the Vikings or the Broncos, if they have bigger quarterback needs come draft time, they could trade up into the top 10. So some trades will definitely go down, as they always do, but I'm not going to personally be doing trades just to make things a little bit, simpler on us here for the sake of this mock draft. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. The number 1 pick is the Chicago Bears, and this is the easiest pick in the entire mock draft, I think, for just about anybody. Caleb Williams is one of one. I think I like Drake May, and I definitely like Jaden Daniels, but I'm kind of just at the point where Caleb Williams has been the number 1 guy for so long. Let's just let it happen. I don't see a reason to kind of kick the can down the road if you're Chicago on getting a new quarterback, because I don't think Justin Fields is getting that contract that he wants. And you kind of got to blame the Giants for the fact that he's going to want that contract. I just don't see a purpose in, if I'm Justin Fields or his agent, you're not going into the negotiation and looking at what Daniel Jones got and saying, I want anything less than that at minimum, if not more. So you reset the clock on having to pay your quarterback, and there's a chance that Caleb Williams come year 2 or 3 is already better than Justin Fields is right now, or what Justin Fields can be. So that's just the potential you get with that pick, and I think you'd be very happy with it, really in every aspect. The Commanders at number 2, another super easy pick for me. It's Drake May, and these 2 picks are pretty much right there. It's the top 2 picks for a reason. I haven't seen a mock draft really stray too far away from these 2 being the top 2 picks in this draft. It's just these are the guys, right? Now, the draft really, for me, starts at number 3, because like I said, the top 2 picks are the top 2 picks. Now, I'm going to dive deep into some of my player comps maybe at some point. I think Caleb Williams is kind of like a full-sized Kyler Murray to me, which is still a top 10 potential quarterback in the NFL. I don't see the Patrick Mahomes stuff as much, but I see full-size Kyler Murray. And then with Drake May, I think you see him in kind of that Trevor Lawrence, Jay Herbo, these guys that they have their inconsistencies. Maybe they have accuracy issues, but they have the arm strength and the arm talent on them. And if they can just make the right reads, stay well in the pocket, or stay good in the pocket, and really develop better accuracy. Like Drake May, if he gets the kind of coaching that Josh Allen got whenever he was young in the league, that's about, that's where you could see him become a top 10, even top 5 quarterback in the league, at least for a season or 2. But number 3, I think, is where the draft really starts, because the Patriots have options. They do still have Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. Obviously, I also think they're a big contender for the pro market, whether it's Tannehill or Kirk Cousins, different guys like that. Now, what I would personally do for them, I don't think quarterback, because if you look, so PFF's need list is not in order by biggest need to least biggest need. It's in order by what position down the board. So like quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. So you're gonna see those positions come up at the top if they have a quarterback need, right? I think this wide receiver position is the absolute biggest need on this team, bar none. And Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the best wide receiver prospect we will have in within the next 25 years. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is genuinely a generational talent, and you're not going to get a receiver prospect like him very often. And I think for the Patriots, man, I think quarterback is something you can go get a Ryan Tannehill and kick the can down the road on drafting a QB because I don't think Jaden Daniels is worth number three as much. But also, like I could see Jaden Daniels at number three if you trade back and someone else moves up, like the Giants or the Falcons or someone like that goes into that spot and wants that QB. But what I'm looking at, and this was a point that I saw made, I forget where I saw it, and I am sorry for forgetting this, but if anybody recognizes and wants to comment it below, please do. Someone was saying that if you draft, I think it might have been Field Yates on ESPN's side of things. They said if you draft Jaden Daniels if you draft a quarterback number three and you throw them into that situation with New England, it could be literally any of these QBs in this class. They will probably be a bust because they have no talent offensively. Like it's next season, they're pretty much going into the season with Demario Davis and Ramondre Stevenson, and that's it. Their offensive line isn't good. Their defense is okay, talent wise, and then their weaponry is about as bad as any team in the league, probably the worst in the league. So for the Patriots, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm getting a generational wide receiver, and I'm just kind of trusting the process because the duo of him and Pop Douglas gives you enough where if you just bring in a Ryan Tannehill, you can at least, I think, with that team and potentially the same defensive philosophies, win 5 or 6, maybe even 7 games next season, and then come in and have a potential to get another top 10 pick where you can get a quarterback, after that bridge year. I think a bridge year for them would be fine with the type of staff they're going to have. But I see, and that's why this is what I would do. Because if I was predicting here, I think they take a quarterback every single day of the week. I think Gerard Mayo is going to want to come in and get a guy that can almost be like his Tom Brady, like the Tom Brady to his Bill Belichick, the guy that can be the long-term franchise guy while he is the head coach of the team. Now, what that pick does is it makes the Cardinals pick extremely difficult because I think wide receiver is the pick for them. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. falling into their laps, getting him with Kyler Murray, feels like a dream. You're going to miss out on that. But don't be too frustrated, I think, if you're a Cardinals fan, because Malik Neighbors in any other draft class would be far and away the number one pick. I've seen people talk about it, and I'm not too far away from it myself, that I think Malik Neighbors might be almost as good, if not just as good of a prospect as Jamar Chase. You can make an argument for him close to like a Justin Jefferson. Like you can make these arguments that out of these LSU receivers that we've seen over the past couple years, he's basically just as good and could even be the best one of the bunch. So we're taking Malik Neighbors there, setting him up well. They get another wide receiver in the room. And they're losing Hollywood Brown, so they're going to need somebody to go alongside this like group of Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson. I'd imagine Greg Dortch is still going to be there next year. And then you bring Malik Neighbors, you get a true number one guy. That's a great receiver room with that group. I feel like that's a great bunch of complementary fits. Now, for the Chargers are in an interesting spot because the player that I think out of their needs that they have, because I agree with PFF on their needs, the player that stands out obviously is going to be Brock Bowers, and I've kind of tried to convince myself of that one. The only player that I will say I'm kind of tempted to go with for them is my personal cornerback one, or my personal DB one, which is Cooper DeJean, because I think he can play outside, slot, nickel, safety. He can do a lot of different things for you. And I think corner is a big need for them because they need somebody to go alongside Asante Samuel Jr. But I am going to go Brock Bowers, and here's the part where I've convinced myself of this pick. And I'm not even a Chargers fan. Chargers fans are the ones that are lobbying for that. If you combine him and whatever tight ends are going to be also in the room in LA with Jim Harbaugh's going to have a field day with Brock Bowers and let's say Donald Parham's still there, and they bring in a better blocker as like that third guy. He's gonna have a field day with Brock Bowers, and that's if I was them, that's what I would do to really give Justin Herbert a great set of weapons because we've seen it with Dalton Kincaid to the Bills this past season. As a rookie, we got to see it. Kelsey with Mahomes. I mean, we've seen these combinations of great QBs, especially in the modern era, getting these electric, quick, big slot type of tight ends that can block still. We've seen those guys get in and be the perfect like 1-2 or like the perfect combination, the perfect chemistry for a quarterback and a tight end to really set a team up. And really, I mean, I think that's the strategy that I would go with if I was the Chargers. Just try to bring in a guy that can be like the number one weapon for the long term for Justin Herbert. Oh my goodness. Now, the Giants, you need a lot of things. Obviously, quarterback is still in play for you because the way the board fell out. And I think with where they're at, Jaden Daniels is the type of quarterback where he can replace Daniel Jones but still run a similar enough offense to Daniel Jones that you're not going to have to uproot everything. And there is an argument to be made that some teams are going to look at Jaden Daniels and say, maybe we need to sit you for a year. We're already paying a quarterback a ton of money that you can't really get off the books until next season. Perfect scenario. I understand maybe wanting Roma Dunze here because you need weapons, but I think at number 6, a guy like Jaden Daniels, who I almost lost on the board there, I should have just sorted by quarterback. You bring in Jaden Daniels and you are set, I think, for a pretty good team. Now, they're a pretty good quarterback and potentially a franchise guy. Now, I do worry about, obviously, you're losing Saquon. Your receiver room is pretty weak, but the receiver pool in this draft class goes pretty damn deep, and I do think that you're giving him an okay offensive line. As long as Evan Neal can start to figure it out, Andrew Thomas obviously has already figured it out. Whenever he's on the field, he's great. So Jaden Daniels at number 6, I just think that gives them a level of dynamism that they didn't really have last season. And I think if you can potentially get a guy like Saquon back into the room, do some fun different stuff with it. But I think that's what I would do from a GM standpoint. And then also if I'm Brian Daboll, give me another quarterback to work with so I can try to save my job. Now number 7, probably the easiest pick in the draft for me. Tennessee Titans are going Joe Alt. Joe Alt's my number 1 tackle in this class by far, and I know that that's a stretch to some people to say, but Olu Fashanu just has too many losses, and Talise Fuaga feels like he's not going to be an elite pass protector, an elite run blocker for sure, but an elite pass protector I'm not confident, whereas Joe Alt I feel like can be elite in both ways, and they just need that tackle position about as bad as any team in football. Now for the Falcons, I think this is where, if I was them, you look at the talent on their offense. They need a quarterback real bad, but I think they're going to be the team I think what I would do if I was them, and what I think is also possibly going to happen, I think they're going to be the Justin Fields destination. Justin Fields, this is what I would do for sure, is Justin Fields, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Maybe you even keep Mac Hollins on the team, and then you go into the NFL draft, and you're thinking, okay, so we have our number 1 receiver, we have our tight end, we have our running back, our quarterback. We could go Roma Dunze, who somehow fell to us at number 8, and we can get an elite number 2. Hold our horses here. You have to win in the trenches. There's a reason why this team last year with Arthur Smith, even though people want to say that it's because he didn't use certain pieces right, they didn't really have everything they needed to be an elite team, an elite defense, this and that. We're going to go to the edge rush board, and my personal number 1 edge rusher in this class, and I'm going to go with that guy, even though I think this is going to be a little bit controversial compared to most people because Dallas Turner's obviously up there, and Jared Verse has been mocked to this team a lot. I'm going Laiatu Latu, who is my number 1 edge in this class. He's a little bit older. He's got the medical retirement in his background where obviously he had to leave, I believe it was Arizona, and then go to UCLA afterwards. I love Liatu Latu, and I think that his pass rush plan and also his ability in run defense, he sells out in run defense. He really does. He's going to be a guy that from day one in the NFL, sure, his ceiling might not be as high as a Dallas Turner or a Jared Verse, but his floor from day one, I think he's going to be upwards of a 10 sack player, at least a 6.5 to 8 sack player. And I think he's going to be a very good run defender, and that's a genuine thought for me. So he's my number one edge. Whenever it comes to edge rushers, I don't really look at upside as much as I look at it for other positions, because with edge rushers, you need production, man. And a guy that can produce from the jump, sure, he might not be the number one edge in football at any point in his career, but as long as he's a top 10 edge in football for almost his whole career, that's better than being a flash in the pan edge rusher, because you're going to pay those guys and give them long contracts. Chicago at number 9 here. Roma Dunze just fell into their lap, and you just got Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze in the same class. That's a beautiful thing. Caleb, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. I still like a couple of their running backs with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson. Could be a pretty damn good offense in about a year or two's time with, I believe they were the team that got Shane Waldron, so that could be very fun for them. Now for the Jets, tackle is the obvious pick here for them, because you got to protect Aaron Rodgers as he comes in. Olu Fashanu has his issues in pass protection or in run blocking at times, and he's had his pass protection losses, but he's still a very good pass protector. There's a reason his average draft position is up at 11, because it's basically right about here. I think I like Fuaga just a little bit more, but I think for the type of offense the Jets are going to run, we're going to go Olu Fashanu for them. That's what I think would fit them best. I think you can put him and I'm blanking on, because they've got him, Elijah Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton. They've had these different tackles come in and out that all kind of have the different flexibilities. You just need somebody that can be just a rock at left tackle, and I think Olu Fashanu is kind of that guy for you. Bring him in, get it done, make it happen. Now, the Vikings here at number 11 have been mocked a quarterback multiple times in the different, mock drafts that I've seen. And I don't mind that for them. I actually think it's a pretty fun way to go if I was them. But for me personally, I think your defensive front has been very weak for the past couple years now. And I think they're going to be bringing back Kirk Cousins, or at least I would want them to. My interior D-line number 1, I know PFF has Byron Murphy at number 1. I'm still a Johnny Newton guy. Jerzon Newton's going to be the top interior guy picked here. I'm picking him at number 11. I think he would basically just be that. He's in that pass rushing defensive lineman mold, and Brian Flores is still the DC over there. Brian Flores is going to love a guy like Jerzon Newton who can get to the quarterback from the interior. That's going to be very fun for him. And I think that's going to kind of set them up to have, because Josh Metellus broke out last year as kind of a linebacker safety hybrid. Daniil Hunter's hitting free agency potentially, but if you get, or I believe he is, so if you get Daniil Hunter back and you're rocking with him and Jerzon Newton in the middle, there could be a very fun defense there, all things said and done. Now, another team here in the Broncos that are looking at quarterback, the way that I see it, I don't think Bo Nix or Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy, any of those 3 QBs, are a top 15, let alone even a top 20 pick. And I think for the Broncos, I think Bo Nix would be a good fit there, but I would almost be tempted if I was them to trade back and try to see if Bo Nix was still on the board. What I would personally do is I would just give yourself that number 2 corner that you don't have. You have Pat Surtain as your number 1 guy. They've gotten some good production out of a couple guys, but you need another, elite corner. Edge rusher, you have a good trio there, but maybe you can add a 4th guy because you have Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name at the moment. But I think And this is one because I did not prepare for this at all. This is one where I'm like, because basically all the corners are on the board here, right? Like I haven't drafted a corner yet. I've only drafted one edge. So we're looking at pretty much all of the star defensive players on the board are still here. And if I'm Denver, I mean, you have, like I said, you have Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning. I forget that edge rusher that I'm blanking on right now. I'm completely lost on who this guy is that I'm thinking of. But what I'm getting at though is that they don't have a number one corner. Or a number one corner, number one edge. They just have a bunch of good rotational edges. Dallas Turner is going to be my pick here. I've convinced myself of it for defense for them. Bring in Dallas Turner, man. Get a number one edge rusher. Get a guy that can be your best edge rusher from day one. That is a perfect pick for them. I would love that for them if I was a Denver Broncos fan. Because him, like I said, him in that group that they already have pretty much sets you up for like long-term success at that defensive spot. And like I said, as you've seen here though, no quarterback off the board at either of those picks because I don't love a quarterback for either of those teams as early as they're picking. And I'm going to kind of contradict myself here soon, and you guys are going to see where that's going to happen. It's going to be very funny. The Raiders here at number 13, I think quarterback is definitely in play for them as well, but I think with the type of team that they're wanting to build, some of the free agents that they have, I think this is the Talise Fuaga destination because he has that guard tackle flexibility. They're losing Jermaine Illuminor, and you definitely need to build your offensive line. I don't think they're bringing Josh Jacobs back, but if they do, a run blocker like Fuaga would be perfect. And I just think that fits the culture, man. You bring in Talise Fuaga, who's just a nasty run blocker, Antonio Pierce as your head coach. That would be very fun to me. Kind of just the route that I'm thinking of, or kind of just the route that I'm leaning for them, is just get a nasty head first guy and kind of his stat, because their offensive line, especially with losing Illuminor, but it was already like, it was okay. It was kind of in that average category, and there was almost no one like irreplaceable on their offensive line. So you bring in a guy like Fuaga who can play right tackle, definitely can play guard for you. That feels really, really good to me. So then we go to the Saints here at number 14. And this is where, as I said, I'm going to kind of contradict myself. I know a lot of people have been giving them edge rushers, interior defensive guys. They just drafted Brian Brzee, though. I know a lot of people have been giving them tackle because, let's say Fuaga was still on the board here. The Trevor Penning experiment hasn't really worked out. I'm going to take my favorite quarterback out of the guys that are left on the board, and that's Bo Nix. I'm going to bring in a guy who can get you out of this Derek Carr mess quicker than with the situation that you're currently in. I don't know. I feel like that's the way to do it. Get a quarterback now and just try to see what happens because they don't really have many like tackle's a need, but with the way the board is falling out, maybe you're taking J.C. Latham. That would be a good pick, but why not at this point take a QB? And because I'm at the point, and this is going to be a hot take to some people, I think based off of last season, I would rather have Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins, which Kirk Cousins isn't a stretch, but Russell Wilson, I'd rather have him over Derek Carr. So we're going into this next season where I don't think they have a quarterback. I don't think Derek Carr's a starter in the NFL anymore. At least I don't think he's a starter that you can win with anymore. So bring in a QB that's a safe pick like Bo Nix. You still have a lot of weapons, and you have potential to get more weapons in free agency and even in the same draft. Go out and get a guy that can be a sure-firing quarterback for you, and just figure that part of it out, right? Now, these corners are still on the board. This is going to be about the part of the draft where that potentially stops a little bit. Cooper DeJean to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are obviously my favorite team. They need corner and safety. Cooper DeJean can play both. That's all you needed to tell me. Kenny Moore's a free agent. They might bring him back. They probably will, but they might not because of his age. But Kenny Moore's a free agent. Juju Brents is only a second-year player. And obviously, the Isaiah Rodgers scandal last season with the betting, he's not on the team anymore, so you need to do something. Safety wasn't great either. Rodney Thomas was having to play a lot of snaps. I'm not a huge fan of like the Julian Blackman thing anymore just because of his injury history. This is a great chance for them to get another guy in the room that can have some flexibility, can be an outside guy, can be a nickel. Definitely some options with him, and that's really where I'm going with that pick, or that's why I like that pick for the Colts. Now for the Seahawks, edge is listed as one of their needs. I think offensive line is a little bit bigger of a deal, but they need interior guys. Troy Fontenot has been talked about a ton as like the hometown reunion type of pick here, but Jared Verse has fallen to number 16, and I know that the average draft position is 17.4 here, but I think because of how valuable edges are to most people, he's going to be off the board in the top 15. So him being here at 16 is very, very tempting to me. They need interior offensive linemen even more, though, and Jackson Powers Johnson is that guy. He is the most dominant non-tackle in this class by far. There's a few different ways they could go with this. I also think that they could be a team that's in the market for a DB as well because of the Jamal Adams situation and things like that. Maybe not in the first round, but definitely at some point. I'm gonna go Jared Verse here. I think I think you get Jared Verse, you put him alongside Boye Mafe. They've had a couple older guys come through over the past couple years. Now you really have a good edge rush duo with Verse and Mafe that you can develop. And I think Jared Verse is just Liatu Latu, and Dallas Turner are all pretty much guaranteed hits to be a team's number one edge at some point, in my opinion. So I like that pick for them a lot. Now, corner, we've only taken Cooper DeJean, I believe. So at 17, the Jaguars kind of get lucky. They kind of get their pick of the litter here. And I know Nate Wiggins is ranked ahead of Quinyon Mitchell in this, but I'm going to take Quinyon Mitchell here for the Jags. I do think defensive back is where I think they'll go and where I want them to go. They just haven't had, ever since the Jalen Ramsey trade, they haven't had a number one guy. And Tyson Campbell had his one breakout year. He's kind of regressed back to who he was, or kind of just, maybe it was a bit of a fluky year. Get Quinyon Mitchell, get a freak athlete that could cover. He can play zone and man coverage. It seems like he can press well. He has good zone instincts. He's just a good player, and that's the fun thing for them if you get a guy like Quinyon Mitchell. I think. I don't know. I like the security of that, and I like the way that he would fit in Jacksonville. Just a freak athlete at corner, and I think corner is going to be. I think really that's one of those though where him, Terrion Arnold, and Nate Wiggins though are all good picks. I'm just kind of going with my favorite of the three. An easier pick here for the Bengals. They need offensive tackle. J.C. Latham is still on the board here at 18. Gonna pick J.C. Latham. He's probably gonna be a top 15 pick. Well, he could fall out of the top 15 because he's only ever been a right tackle, and he might only ever be a right tackle. So you're not going to take him too high, but he's a very good player and a big man. I think, what is he, like 6'6", 350 or 6'7", 340 or some crazy measurable. We're going to see that at the combine and see how crazy he actually is. Michael Penix to the Rams is going to be my next pick, and I know there's the injury issues. There's a lot of things with Michael Penix. And I love the Rams. I love the Rams roster, and you have a chance here in this draft to add someone fun to kind of just keep adding more talent. The Matthew Stafford thing, I know he had a great year last year. I don't know if actually, but J.J. McCarthy here might be the better pick. You know what? You still have Stafford on the roster, J.J. McCarthy to the Rams. And I'm not a big J.J. McCarthy guy. I think Penix is the better quarterback. But J.J. McCarthy is that guy that you need to mold and have him sit behind somebody. This is the perfect scenario where they can sit back and say, we have Matthew Stafford as like a mentor. Plus, it allows us to sit J.J. McCarthy for a year or two because he doesn't really have the reps of an NFL quarterback yet. Or even an NFL rookie. He doesn't really have like college reps yet. We've seen great tape. We've seen measurables, we've seen arm talent. We just need to see if it's consistent enough because he hasn't really had to be consistent enough. Throw him on the field, or throw him behind Matthew Stafford, but we don't have to throw him out there from day one. Let him develop, let him work. That's a fun pick for them, and that's probably the pick that I think they should go there at number 19. I just think, the Matthew Stafford thing, I think you only got a year or two left out of him, and he gets banged up quite a bit where you might need an injury replacement at some point. And like I said, J.J. McCarthy, you can give him a year, even 2 years to sit. You can kind of Jordan Love this guy. Number 20, Steelers, they have center as a need listed, and it is a need for them. And Jackson Powers Johnson is still on the board. He can even play guard if they want him to. And that's kind of the Steelers' way, is to get offensive linemen. And that's where I was kind of looking at for Jackson Powers Johnson this whole time, was either the Steelers or the Cowboys, where they do have obviously that positional need, but also just because Jackson Powers Johnson is just a phenomenal offensive lineman. He was in Mobile absolutely wrecking people at the Senior Bowl. So that's going to be a very good pick for them. That's going to be a fun pick for them, and a guy that, if I was looking at who in this draft class would just be the most dope to see in a Steelers uniform, he's definitely going to be up there as well, just to see a big-bodied center that can move like he does with Powers Johnson on the back. And that's a guy that, I think that he's going to be very good as a run blocker, but also I think his pass protection, like we saw it in Mobile, like I said, he was moving bodies around really, really well. And they're probably going to have a new quarterback in there. Either they're going to be the team that gets Russell Wilson, they're going to be the team that gets Justin Fields. New quarterback, trying to make something happen for the future, trying to be a playoff team again, trying to be consistently at the top of that division again in a very tough division. So they're going to need it. They're going to need a great offensive line, and they already have a couple pieces here with the tackles. They got Broderick Jones last season, so just keep building. Get that last piece for the offensive line. You can kick the can down the road a little bit on defense for them, because I do agree that corner, Nate Wiggins is still here. That'd be a good pick for them. But Joey Porter Jr. was their pick last year. Sure, you have to replace Patrick Peterson, but I kind of see them being big in the pro market for corner, where there is a few different guys that are going to be available, where they already have Joey Porter Jr. and they can maybe go for that. And Jackson Powers Johnson, compared to the corners in this draft, is just like, he's one of those guys that's a guaranteed really good player to me. None of these corners, even Cooper DeJean, none of these corners are like guaranteed great players. I think some of them are good players for sure, but Jackson Powers Johnson is a guaranteed elite NFL player to me. He just has that feel, and a lot the first center off the board in most classes, that one center that goes in the first round is kind of always going to be that guy. For the Dolphins, they're another team where quarterback has been talked about. I know that I've seen Joel Klatt had Michael Penix to them because he can kind of replace Tua. I'm not ready to say all that yet, though. I think that a run blocker could be fun for them, and Troy Fontenot and Graham Bartner are both here for that flexibility, and I am going to go Troy Fontenot for them. They need somebody to replace Robert Hunt, who's hitting free agency, and I do think Fontenot is a guy that will kick inside the guard at the next level. That's the pick that I would go with. You got to replace Robert Hunt bad. That guy was good, and I don't think they're going to be able to get him back or be able to re-sign him. Fontenot is just the first option that I see on the board, that because Marius Mims has to be a tackle to me. Graham Barton could play guard as well, but I like Fontenot a little bit more. You're not going to take Zach Frazier just yet, so we're going to go with the Fontenot pick there. The Eagles need a defensive back pretty rough, and Nate Wiggins falling to them at 22. We're just gonna let the rich get richer with the Eagles getting a guy like Nate Wiggins. That is absolutely absurd for them. Nate Wiggins is a freak. Nate Wiggins is a very good, gonna be a very good NFL player to some extent. Like I was just saying earlier, I don't know if he's gonna be elite, but I do like him quite a bit. There's a reason, obviously, I have him as the third corner off the board. Because he's not the most athletic guy like Mitchell is, and I don't think his tape hits as hard as Caleb DeJean's does, but he's going to be very, very fun with that team. Now, another guy that somehow falls to a team where you're kind of thinking, wow, this is crazy stuff here. Byron Murphy to the Texans could be very fun. And with the team that they currently have, that is a very, very good pick, I think, for them. Wide receivers obviously listed as a need because they do have kind of a weird receiver room. A lot of guys that have been playing a little bit overperforming, but the way I'm going to go with it for the Texans here, and I do like the linebackers in this class, and I know that they desperately need a linebacker. I just don't know if any of these guys are first round picks. Maybe Peyton Wilson, I could see it. And I actually do like Junior Colson quite a bit as well, who they have as the number 3 guy. The pick here for me, with the type of team they're rocking with right now and kind of the way they've been playing, because Dalton Schultz was on a 1-year contract. I think they would bring him back, but even if they do, it'd probably be another 1-year deal. And Jatavian Sanders, I think, kind of a prediction for the combine, will probably play himself into a late first, early second round pick, whereas right now most people have him kind of middle of the second round or like kind of upper second round. The edge rush room or the edge rushers that are still available in this class are not fantastic. And I mean, Byron Murphy is a pass rushing D lineman. Him and Will Anderson, and if you keep Jonathan Grenard somehow, would be very, very fun. Let's just do it. We're gonna give them Byron Murphy here. And we're gonna kind of force the Cowboys' hand, because the Cowboys obviously were sitting there at 24 thinking, oh my god, there's no way we're gonna be able to get Byron Murphy. That's beautiful, that's awesome for us. It's exactly what we needed. We picked Mozzie Smith last year to be a run stuffer. He wasn't very great. Now we need an interior guy that can really kind of push everybody inside and make things happen and get to the quarterback. Now our hands kind of forced. We need a corner. Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland have been pretty good. Stephon Gilmore is pretty much ready to be out the door, though. Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland need that third guy with them. Terrion Arnold, come in, pretty much finish off or give us the Alabama duo of him and Diggs, and that can be your 3 corners. I know that corner out of these needs probably isn't even the top. It's probably not even the third or fourth one. It's damn near at the bottom of those 5 needs, but I think that Terrion Arnold's almost a can't-miss prospect compared to Zach Frazier and some of these other guys that are still available at the positions of need that they have. And also, like I said, I mean, I think you pair him with Diggs and Deron Bland. That's a great room. Very fun room as well for the Cowboys. I like that a lot. This is another pick that I think kind of sets itself a little bit, which is the Packers here at number 25. I definitely think they're going to be in the market for a safety, and Tyler Nubin being here. Tyler Nubin's just a perfect fit or just a really good number 1. And this is the first time that I pulled up these stats actually in this episode. I just realized that. But the reason why I bring him up is because he's been a deep safety, almost 500 snaps last season. He's played over 1,000 snaps at deep safety in his career, or around. Was it over 1,000 or was it over? It was over 1,000. Quick math out of the brain. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. He's already played in cold weather. Obviously, we don't want to hype that up too much, but a cold weather player comes in, goes, and they need to replace their single high guy because they were using Darnell Savage in that role, and he really wasn't looking that great in that system. You bring in a new defensive coordinator, and from what I know about the new defensive coordinator, you're going to need to replace that single high safety pretty badly. Tyler Nubin can play as your deep safety, either in cover 2 or in cover 1 as a single high guy, and you need that badly. I know the other positions of need that they have listed are their tackle being one of them, where you can maybe get Amarius Mims. I don't love Amarius Mims to the Packers, though. I think Zach Tom's good. I think Bakhtiari obviously still being there. If he can stay healthy and you can get a healthy year out of him, you pretty much, between him and Zach Tom and Elgin Jenkins, who can obviously kick out if you need him to, you have your tackles. It's just about finding a balance there with the injury issues that they've had. Another team here that could go corner, that could go edge, that could go tackle. This is a very tricky spot here for the Buccaneers. It kind of depends on what they do with Baker Mayfield, and I think Baker played his way into another contract after last season, but I still think Michael Penix to the Bucs could happen or should be considered. I don't love Baker for the long term. I just think that he definitely played his way into another contract with them. They're going to need corner. Everybody's talked about them needing corner for a little bit now. They obviously lost Sean Murphy-Bunting this past season. He went to the Titans. And then we're talking about, Antoine Winfield's potentially a free agent. So their DB room as a whole could be a little bit tricky going into next season. Kool-Aid McKinstry still on the board. Another pick here, which we're on a run of defense at this point. 4 picks in a row. Let's make it 5. Let's go Kool-Aid. Just get a corner in the room that you trust for the long term. I feel like right now they have a few older guys. They have a couple developmental guys possibly here and there, but their talent as a team right now is kind of more the pass rush, which they did just cut Shaq Barrett, but it's kind of more the interior guys with Vita Vea, and then, obviously you have Levante David at linebacker who's getting older. Their defense as a whole, they're going to need to pick on defense regardless, and I think out of all the defensive guys left, I like Kool-Aid. Pretty much I like Kool-Aid and Chop Robinson is like my next 2 guys defensively. And I don't think you would pick Chop here if you're the Bucks. Now, like I said, I would consider Penix if I was them, but I imagine they're bringing back Baker, so can't be too confident in that one. Now for the Cardinals, you got Malik Neighbors with the 4th overall pick, and I like some of the thoughts that people have had about maybe the Cardinals going out and getting another tackle with one of the top picks or with their 4th overall pick to try to put alongside Paris Johnson. For me personally, you already got Malik Neighbors, so you got your wide receiver in the door. Let's go get a guy like Graham Barton who can play tackle and guard, because I do think they're going to need tackle guard flexibility with whoever they do pick on the offensive line in this draft, and he's got the best flexibility left on the board pretty much in the entire draft for me. So that's going to be the guy we're going to take there. And now this is going to be one where I kind of make a stand here on a player that I don't love. Troy Franklin out of Oregon. There's 3 more wide receiver picks going to be made in this first round because I think the Bills, Ravens, and Chiefs should all take a wide receiver. Gabe Davis is going to be leaving the Bills, and then the Ravens and Chiefs have elite quarterbacks and no number 1 receivers on either of those teams. So all 3 of those teams are taking wide receiver. None of them will be Troy Franklin because I just don't love him. Brian Thomas Jr., you're joining Stephon Diggs. You're replacing Gabe Davis, and you're going to be a better Gabe Davis, and I promise you he will be a better Gabe Davis. Troy Franklin, to me, Troy Franklin is just I think he's like a poor man's MVS is what I'm kind of worried that he might be, and I'm not drafting that type of potential player in the first round. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. is the top corner left on the board according to PFF, and according to me, I don't disagree. This team here in the Detroit Lions needs a corner. I like TJ Tampa quite a bit. We're going to go Rakestraw just because he is the top corner left, and they need to go corner with this pick. That's really the only hole on their team, in my opinion, is that corner position. Jonah Jackson's potentially leaving in free agency. I think is the guy that they're losing. And granted, if I butcher a name or if I forget something about free agency, that's possible here. But they're potentially losing some offensive line in free agency. But if they bring those guys back, which a lot of Lions players tend to be bought in, it seems like, and want to stay, then they're going to be completely fine. I think corner is really just the main need that I look at. Corner and interior D-line, and obviously the interior D-lineman left. Chris Jenkins is still on the board. I like that pick, not this high. So we're going to obviously pass on that and go with Ennis Rakestraw. Now, the next wide receiver pick being the Ravens, and the guy that I like for them, and this is going to be where I make another pick where I kind of, push someone ahead of a couple guys here maybe, is A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell has ball skills, man, and he might not be the biggest guy or the fastest guy in the class. You might look at a Keon Coleman's athleticism, or you might look at Troy Franklin's speed and kind of put them over A.D. Mitchell, but A.D. Mitchell is just a ball winner. And the Ravens just need somebody that can be 90 targets in a season or 120 targets in a season. A.D. Mitchell screams that to me. He screams, put him on the outside, let him do his thing, and he can cook, and he can be your number 1 wide receiver, and they have needed that pretty much since Lamar has gotten in the building. They haven't had just like a dominant number 1 guy, and I think A.D. Mitchell could be that. Now, I picked Brian Thomas over A.D. Mitchell for the Bills because the Bills need that deep threat like Brian Thomas more, but I actually like A.D. Mitchell a little bit more as a wide receiver over Brian Thomas, and I almost even put him head-to-head with the guy that we had above him, Roma Dunze, in terms of certain little things that he does, and obviously Rome is leagues ahead of everybody else at wide receiver in this class, that we've picked, obviously with Thomas, AD, and then obviously the guys left on the board. I think that Rome, Neighbors, and Marv are untouchable almost. But there's a couple things that a couple of these guys do that you can compare them to the top three and almost be like, maybe that guy is almost as good, or maybe he's almost as good at that category, right? Now, we get to the 49ers, and this is where interior offensive line was struggling this season. Colton McKivitz, John Feliciano, Spencer Burford. They had a few different guys that were just kind of all over the place, or all over the place this season. Zach Frazier obviously played decently in zone, better pass blocker though as an interior guy, as a center. Played all of his snaps as a center. Tyler Guyton though is the guy, he cannot, his zone grade's not great, and he only played pretty much right tackle. Really just the offensive lineman on the board right now. Amarius Mims wouldn't be a good fit either because of his size and just kind of his slow movement. Jordan Morgan's the pick here for them if they want a zone blocking, run blocking guy. And he's a good pass blocker as well. He's a bit of a reach compared, you're obviously taking him over Amarius Mims. I know a lot of people have Amarius Mims as a top 30 pick. For some reason, Amarius Mims, he's not a great, but a really good pass blocker. But he just wouldn't fit with some of these teams that I've kind of gone with, and I don't know. I'm just a little bit lower on him than some people are. I do think he would be almost the first pick out of the second round, though. We're going to go Jordan Morgan here just for the scheme fit. I don't think you just take an offensive lineman in any of these spots for the sake of taking one. Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, some of these guys would come in to San Fran and just kind of feel like they were stuck in quicksand trying to run that offense. So you need that number one, not a number one, what am I talking about? I'm getting mixed up with other positions here, but you need that guy that can play that zone scheme and be quick feet, get out, make blocks in the run game. And then we finish up with our last wide receiver, Ladd McConkey's going 32. And I say that because Ladd McConkey with Pat Mahomes would be the perfect fit. They need to do this. I know Keon Coleman can catch and be this big, whatever. They put Ladd McConkey in the slot. Keep designing touches for Rashee Rice. Have MVS on the roster for a deep threat. They might win a third in a row. That's the pick there. PFF is going to sit here and criticize me and tell me that I was a bad drafter, but this is the mock draft here. Can we zoom this out? Oh my goodness, they made it really big for some reason. Let's bring this up here. This will probably show it a little bit better. Okay, here we go. All right, so that was our mock draft. That was explaining every pick that I was making in this class. Just a fun way to get the pod started, ladies and gentlemen. The first ever episode of the MVPod. I hope you liked that mock. If there's anything that you agreed with, disagreed with, absolutely hated, any other comments or concerns, let me know down in the comment section below. And definitely subscribe to this channel. Definitely let me know what you think about the podcast and give me some suggestions for the intro, because the intro I didn't really know what to say. But you know what? That's it. We're out. Peace, everybody. Enjoy yourselves and have a great combine week as we go into the month of March.